Alright, values.
So what are your values?
We are not talking about those values.
Oh, I see. You're talking about those values.
What are your values though?
My values? I don't know. I think I'm valiant, responsible, brave, courageous, and I don't know.
Pretty good, man, pretty good.
Alright, continue then. I won't disturb you this time.
That's what I thought. Alright, values. So what are values? So value in art is the darkness or lightness of a tone or a color. So here I have a grayscale strip. So the value of an object can lie anywhere on the grayscale strip. So the light areas fall on the lighter part of the grayscale strip, and the darker values or the shadow values lie on the darker part of the grayscale strip. These values can vary depending upon the climate, the scene, or the atmosphere, or the intensity of the light, or anything else in particular. Now, why values are important? Without values, we cannot determine the light area from the shadow area. In the real world, there are a lot of values. Like there are thousands and thousands and thousands of values. Okay, but humans have learned to simplify the values into 5 or 6 tones so that it doesn't get too complicated. Before we start painting values, we need to understand how are values created or how are values formed. So as you know from the first video, everything exists in total darkness, and it is because of light that we can see. So when light hits a source, it creates a shadow. So here I have a ray of light source that is lighting everything from here to here and on this side, and is lighting everything past this cast shadow. This side is obstructed, or the side that is in shadow doesn't get light. Okay, so when I move the light source like this, the shadow will decrease. So the shadows depend upon where the light source is actually placed. So if I push the light almost horizontal, the cast shadow will be much more longer. But the thing about light is it doesn't just move in one direction. It bounces off from the surface. It bounces a lot. There are like thousands and crores of bounces of light everywhere. These rays of light go everywhere. So for example, this light source, okay, it is creating a cast shadow, it is creating a light side, it is creating a shadow side. But then the skylight and the other rays of light are actually bouncing off the floor, and the skylight is hitting the cast shadow and creating something called as ambient light or bounced light. Okay, so it is not just one source of light, it is like multiple sources of light. Okay, light travels in all directions, it bounces off from all of the surfaces that we see. The light doesn't create the same tones of shadows and light areas everywhere on every object. Okay, when there is a dark colored object and you shine a light on it, it doesn't create that much strong light area. The vice versa is true for a light colored floor. So the shadow over here is lighter than the light area of the dark colored object. Same goes for a light colored object and a dark colored floor. What if the light is overexposed? Okay, it overexposes the object. The light rays bounce off from every direction, thus overexposing the object to light. It even overexposes the floor. Same goes for the underexposed object. If the light source is weak, then it doesn't have that much strength onto the object that the light is shining on. Alright, now I want to talk about how different lighting conditions and how different lighting weather affect. So in our first example over here, we have a sun shining directly onto the subject. So the light family and the shadow family are separated on the grayscale spectrum. So you can see a clear separation of the light and the shadow families, and that happens in almost all direct light sources like the sun, the moon, lamp or street lamp or whatever. So the next is an overexposed scenario. So what happens over here is both the light and the shadow families are pushed towards the lighter areas of the grayscale spectrum. okay, because everything is overexposed, everything is like almost incomplete white, except for something that is like pure black, but still that is like almost overexposed. So over here her black shirt is like almost black, but still the light areas are like overexposed. Contrary to that, in the third example, everything is underexposed, so everything moves towards the darker areas of the grayscale spectrum. So as you can see, every value over here is on the dark side. And now the last example would be ambient light or cloudy scene. Okay, so in this type of scenario, the values come closer to each other in the middle. Okay, as you can see, I have picked some values over here. So yeah, they come closer together. Okay, they are like very tightly packed together or closer together. So yeah, different lighting conditions, different weather conditions affect the values differently. So now, how do we paint values? I first and foremost simplified the values into two values. Okay, and then I've started adding different values. Which is the strongest point of light value. Then there is a half tone, which is the curving of the light value into the shadow value. Then there is the ambient or bounced light. So as I mentioned before, the ambient and bounced light is the result of light bouncing off from the floor or from any other surface to the object. And then there is something called as ambient occlusion. Ambient occlusion essentially means that no light is able to enter that area. Okay, so that is why it is in total darkness. So the sphere touching the ground, that is a part of the ambient occlusion. So these are the main values that are essential in drawing. And yes, you can soften those values up if you want. Paint a sphere, because that is the easiest thing to do. After you can paint a sphere, then you can move on to complex objects like the face. So yes, we have this Zelda's face right here, and I'm going to light her up using this reference. Alright. So yeah, this is the final result when I remove all the outlines. The painting still holds up and it looks very painty or painterly styled. Okay, I mean, yeah, you can keep the outlines if you want. I mean, if that's in your style, but I like stuff like this. Now every artist doesn't paint all the values, and that allows them the freedom to change their art style. Okay, the art style changes depending upon how values are used or how many values are used. All right, for example, some artists like to use one or two values, some artists like to use all of them. So now we are going to see some examples of different artists using different quantities of values. So first one is Frank Frazetta. He uses almost like all the values, so his style is more realistic. Okay, next up is Guez. This artist almost draws in the darker area of the grayscale spectrum. He paints values to the dark side. His art style almost has a darker tone. So yeah, as you can see, everything is on the dark side of the color of the grayscale spectrum. But he is also using some light areas like this to accentuate or to move the focus of the viewer to that particular object or area. Next up is Color Reaper. I absolutely love his art, by the way. He is a comic artist. Okay, so most of the comic artists use only two values. It's almost like cell shaded style of painting. So the prominent values are two values, the light one and the shadow one, and there is the third value, which is the reflected light. So yeah, and he isn't using any soft shadows, so that creates another level of stylization. Next up is Alex Wed. He is using mostly two values, and then there is the third value for the ambient occlusion. He isn't using any ambient light or highlight values. Okay, that again creates a different style. And then finally there is Moritello. He almost uses like one value or at the most two values. Okay, so his stuff is like almost flat but also very different in style. So yeah, the bottom line is using values in different ways affect the art style in that particular way. Okay, so yeah, experiment with using values in different ways to create your own art style, to create your own language of painting, drawing and painting. Okay, create your own language of art. Yes, and I think that's it. In the next video, I'll be talking about edges, all about edges and how to create soft edges, hard edges, lost edges, etc, etc, etc. So please subscribe for that so that you do not miss out the video, and take care. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.
You there? Subscribe and join the Discord and start drawing, or I'll come there and you know what I will do. Goodbye.